up, guys? It's been a little bit since our last actually serious video, and this time around we're obviously going to be working with the Indigo Tribe. And something about the Indigo Tribe is that they're not exactly what everybody thinks they are. The reason why I'm saying that is pretty much everyone I ever talked to about the emotional spectrum in general, I asked them, hey, what kind of lantern do you think you would be, after explaining the entire emotional spectrum to them. And it never fails. People always say, well, I'd just be a compassion lantern because I have compassion. I'm a compassionate person. And at first glance, looking at compassion and the emotional spectrum from an outside perspective, I would understand why most people would think that that's a good choice for them personally. But in the real world, we look at compassion as a very positive thing that everybody should embrace and does embrace. However, in DC, it's utilized in a very unique way and is very different than what most would consider compassion or its usage conceptually the way we view it. But before we dig into the details of everything going on with compassion, we're going to run through a brief history of the Indigo Tribe. So the first major appearance of the Indigo Tribe, or the Compassion Lanterns, had relevance was during Blackest Night, and they were a very mysterious group compared to the other Lantern Corps. Every other emotion had been set up to this point out of the minor emotions besides compassion. The Indigo Tribe just kind of showed up speaking a language no one recognized and helped the verse deal with the armies of Necron. It seemed very odd that the Indigo One, the leader of the Indigo Lanterns, had a vast knowledge of the cosmology of the DC existence, the prophecy of Blackest Night, and what to do in order to stop it when most didn't have a clue it was even happening. We were introduced to the general power set of the Indigo Tribe and the compassion emotion. It appears they wielded staffs and rings, something that was very unorthodox to have a staff as a lantern, could teleport across the universe with seemingly no problems, and could go toe-to-toe with some of the most dangerous foes in all of DC. The Indigos showed the ability to force compassion onto others, especially emotional wavelengths, to communicate across all rings and seem to have a very strong insight to anything that had to do with emotions. Indigo One even manages to undo a Black Lantern construct that the entire Lantern Justice League and New Guardians were still stuck in, implying that they could even mess with death-based hacks in some way. At the end of the day, they saved everyone alongside the heroes, but we were left with a strange twist. It appears they kidnapped the newly revived Black Hand and had Black Hand as some sort of prisoner alongside them. He appears drugged or comatose or something along those lines. It seems very odd they would do something like this considering their positive actions during the entire Blackest Night event. It doesn't necessarily seem to stack up with their characters. To reinforce the creepy factor, there's a very weird untold story of the Lantern Corps, which includes a brief introduction to the odd group known as the Indigo Tribe before the Blackest Night starts. During the beginning of the War of Light, a Green Lantern and a Sinestro Corps member crash on an unknown planet, I would assume is Nock, the home planet of the Indigo Lanterns. The Green Lantern was alive but injured, and he warned the Indigo tribesmen that the Sinestro Corps member would kill them if they got closer. The Sinestro Corps member arrives as Indigo One covers the Green Lantern's mouth, absorbs all of his willpower away from him, and kills him. Seeing this, the Sinestro Corps member is weirded out but still attacks with a massive energy blast from the tribe, but Indigo One absorbs it and redirects it back at the Sinestro Corps member in the form of a massive creature, scaring him off the planet. They just stand there creepily after that, with what seems like no remorse for having what they did, just speaking in their odd language. Why would they just kill that Green Lantern? He hadn't done anything wrong. He might have even been protecting them. The next major event that the Indigo Tribe is in is called Brightest Day, and they're featured rather heavily. They start off finding the emotional entity of compassion itself, called Proselyte, in some unknown place, which I would speculate once again is Nock, and we'll cover that later. They bring Proselyte back to Earth as they already recognize it needs a host for some reason and do not choose themselves as a host. Odd. Arriving on Earth, they find an ambulance traveling around with multiple injured people on it when it crashes. One of the paramedics lie crushed underneath the ambulance, still pushing to help those who died or who were underneath his care as he begins to die. The Indigo Tribe, including a newly reformed Black Hand donning their colors, staff, and ring, immediately approached the scene. However, the Indigo Tribe used the body of the paramedic for the new host for proselyte, saving the man in the process. It seems they chose him for his ability to feel compassion despite the situation he was in. And this is a unique thing even to see amongst entities specific to the Indigo Tribe, or at least proselyte. The Indigo Tribe sought out Hal Jordan for the sake of the entities because they knew that they were under siege, showing once again that the Indigo Tribe, or at least Indigo 1, has some sort of major insight to the events happening before most others do. But the heroes of Earth as well as Hal Jordan were rather weirded out by Black Hand being among them. To make things worse, Black Hand, the reason why they're all weirded out, in the former arc was the literal personification of death and unlife itself, but now he seemed different. When asked how this was possible, the Indigos simply said that he was reborn when he wielded the Ring of Compassion, and that the light of the Indigos changed him. Hal claims this sounds like some form of brainwashing. Proselyte and its host then claim the Indigo Light helps those who cannot help themselves, saying that his power can undo bigotry, hatred, and evil itself. This leads Hal to the natural question that would come from this reasoning. If those rings fill you with compassion, then what are you like without them? Murderers and maniacs like Black Hand? Adara, which was hope itself, the entity in a host, as well as Saint Walker, the most notable Blue Lantern, both do not sense any hope within any of the Indigo Tribe, including Proselyte, which seems even more unusual. Saint Walker claims he knew that they could channel the light of other spectrums, but didn't know it was a necessity, or in other words, meaning it's the only way they feel those emotions. The Indigo Tribe then preps to take down everyone there, but unfortunately Krona, a mad guardian, shows up, slaps everyone around, and forces everyone to work together to fight the newly formed Parallax Flash. After a brief skirmish with Hal Jordan, Proselyte snags Parallax Flash and reveals it can control all emotions at once. It then goes to remove Parallax from Flash through an emotional exorcism. But unfortunately, Krona then one-shots everyone, steals all their entities, and manages to leave. Later on, Indigo 1 leaves with Hal Jordan to find the missing Lantern entities. In the next arc, during the War of the Green Lanterns, Indigo 1 travels around with Hal Jordan and the rest of the New Guardians as they come across the Book of Black, which was a journal of Necron, the Lord of the Unliving, Scar, his guardian, and Black Hand, the Herald. A powerful artifact to be sure, but it was worse this time considering it was empowered by the story witch Lyssa Drac. Dragging all of the New Guardians inside besides Hal Jordan with its prophetic pages, they were all mind hacks within their own stories inside the book. Their rings, however, did not go inside the book with them. Hal Jordan does take the rings, and later on it's John Stewart who uses Indigo 1's ring while they can't use their own Green Lantern rings due to outside interference. However, none of the New Guardians that were captured by the Book of Black were capable of freeing themselves from its influence besides Sinestro. Sinestro is actually strong-willed enough to recognize he was being mind-hacked and tear through the pages of the book to try and find his way out. This is when he stumbles up upon a place he hadn't been before, and he was struck from behind by Indigo 1. This was a much crazier and more erratic Indigo 1 than we have ever seen. She was rambling about escaping and wanted to know where Abin Sur was. This is very odd, considering Abin Sur was the alien and Green Lantern who mentored Sinestro, and was also the Lantern who died and gave Hal Jordan his green ring. Sinestro was intrigued, but had more pressing matters to attend to, and left her in whatever hell she found herself in the Book of Black. Eventually, the New Guardians got out of the book, but she still had no ring, because John was wearing it. And as a result, she maintained this seemingly irrational or seemingly violent personality she had until her ring found her after a few of her sentences. She was still looking for Abin Sur. The second the ring was back upon her, she immediately turned back to normal. But she witnessed something that bothered her. As a result of the heroic action during the battle against Krona, Sinestro had earned a Green Lantern ring again. This disturbed her as she returned home to her home planet of Nock. So in the next major story arc that included the Indigo Tribe watch over the actions of the newly appointed Green Lantern Sinestro. Later on, they all appear before Hal Jordan and Sinestro as the Indigo Tribe tries to kidnap Sinestro. Hal was concerned with some things that Sinestro had said before he was taken and decided to follow up. However, they both get taken by the Indigo Tribe as a result of that. It's here we actually get to see what the conversion process to becoming an Indigo Lantern is like. Hal, while locked up, runs into some crazy-ass inmates under the control of the Indigo Tribe. Hal's jailkeeper, Indigo Tribesman Black Hand, apologizes for all of the things he had done while not under the influence of an Indigo ring. Black Hand proves that the Indigos can cycle through all emotions one at a time, and Hal actually shows the capability of charging his ring off the green energy that the Indigos could provide, implying they can charge other rings. Hal escapes later on and tries to use his ring, but its functions were limited because the energy the ring absorbed is simulated, and as a result it's not as legit, so he can't do everything he normally can. They aren't simply drawing on the emotion, they're faking the creation of it, faking the use of it. But back to the conversion process. It appears that the Indigo Tribe infect the ring's power that you have on you, if you have one, with compassion and also drain it. They then force compassion energies into your mind and begin to mind hacks you. They throw every misfortune, misdeed, and wrong thing you've ever done against you in an attempt to convert you to their ideology. The reason why this is impressive is that this works on Sinestro, and this is the same Sinestro who was shown capable of resisting the Book of Black in the prior story arc, The War of the Green Lanterns. And once this process is complete, they bestow an Indigo ring upon you, converting you entirely unto their ways. Hal, off and about, tries to find the Sinestro, but instead finds a massive statue of Abin Sur on the planet. Why would the Indigos praise the greatest Green Lantern before Hal or Sinestro? He seems to keep being brought up anytime we're associated with the Indigos. Why? The statue begins to speak much like a lantern ring would to Hal by saying Abin Sur was their savior and creator. But before he can investigate further, Hal is jumped by the converted Indigo Tribesmen Sinestro and their flock. Hal realizes he can't break Sinestro free of the indoctrination, but instead decides to target the central power battery of the Indigos. He locates the central power battery with his ring and escapes, hoping he can turn it off and save Sinestro. He continues to be confused on what Abin has to do with anything to do with the Indigo Corps. Rolling up on where Hal believes the Indigo power battery is, he comes across Nostromo, the guardian of the Indigo Lantern Tribe. He claims that he isn't an Indigo because he isn't a sociopath, but he did set up the entire Indigo Tribe with another Green Lantern, much like Hal Jordan. Many years ago, there were raiding parties that would arrive on this planet called Nock, and would begin harvesting the natives for human trafficking purposes. However, Abin Sur showed up, and with the help of the natives, they fought back. Together, they found the Indigo Light deep in a spring from within a cavern in one of the Forbidden Forests. Although the spring's origin is unknown, just somewhere within the great planet of Nock, they used its light and heat to forge weapons of pure compassion. Those inflicted with the wounds from them would momentarily be overcome with all of the remorse for their actions. Most of the surviving natives left deep into the jungles of this world, but Nostromo decided to stay and teach Abin the ways of the Indigo Light since he seemed to be very adept with them. Together they forged the first Indigo ring. Now this makes sense because Abin Sur was Sinestro's teacher, and it's possible that Sinestro learned a lot of the details he knew in order to create his Yellow Lantern rings from Abin Sur, who in turn, in this situation, created the indigo rings. And when he was done creating this first one with Nostromo, he essentially went out into the verse and brought back a woman named Irok. And Irok was essentially his op. I mean, she had been bothering for a long time, just small stuff like killing, his child, his daughter. But when he brought her back, his goal was to change her, and they put the ring on her. And Irok became the first Indigo Lantern and changed her name to Indigo 1. The ring changed her by filling her void-filled heart with compassion. She cried for hours and hours at all the pain she caused Abin Sur and everyone that she caused in her long life of savagery. However, Nostromo, seeing this, decided to keep forging rings for Abin because they could bring more people back and convert more people into the idea of compassion, thus limiting the psychopaths in the verse, as well as giving more forces for the side of what most would consider good. It's then that Nostromo even confirms Hal's suspicions about the Indigo Tribe in the Brightest Day arc. They are indeed the worst killers and sadists the universe has ever seen. They were all converted, for a force for good, a force for compassion. But why would Abin Sur do this? Abin Sur had a vast knowledge of not only the Green Ring, but the emotional spectrum in general. Way before the War of Light, as well as the solidification of other Lantern Corps, Abin had already been considering multiple emotions as concepts, not just will, hoping that they could use them all in unison, or together as a cohesive force. An idea at the time Sinestro put up with. But more so than that, Abin had come across Atrocitus, a powerful blood mage whose magics could foresee the future. Atrocitus foresaw the Blackest Night and told Abin of this among other things. He figured that the other emotions would be needed in order to stop Necron's armies. But it wasn't that simple either, as Hal already tells him that the Blackest Night has come and gone. And as he says this to Nostromo, Nostromo freaks out and says things will only get worse after the Blackest Night, according to what Abin had foretold. That every core would be destroyed from a threat within one of them. And that threat was the undefeatable Guardians of the Universe. Lol. Knowing that he could win a direct confrontation with the Guardians, he decided to create the Indigo Tribe as a way to test the effectiveness to the potency of the Indigo Rings. Abin Sur had the intent to convert the Guardians of the Universe to compassion so that they would not try and overcome and destroy all life as we know it. Hal then breaks the news to Nostromo that Abin Sur is dead, and he replaced him. In a state of disbelief, he destroys the central Indigo power battery, and in turn shuts off the rings that the Indigo tribesmen are wearing. It appears that once the Indigo rings are deactivated in this way, the individual is unsure of what happened and are back to their original selves. In other words, the odd Compassion Lanterns just return to being the universe's greatest sadists and murderers. All these guys had beef with Abin Sur, so they would definitely have beef with any Green Lantern, and as a result go to chase him down. They almost trample the newly freed Black Hand, who panics and tries to ditch as fast as possible. Catching up with Nostromo, Hal convinces him to help get the Indigos back online, as he doesn't want them all running around, a bunch of crazy psychos with no way off the planet, since he has a half-busted ring with a simulated charge. Sinestro leaves to hold off the now psychos, while the other two head back to the central Indigo power battery. Irok the Child Killer, or as we knew her as an Indigo Lantern, Indigo 1, sees this and steps away to follow Hal. Nostromo tries to repair the battery and cannot immediately do so. The process of forging a spark of the Indigo hue takes weeks to forge from the deepest layers of the Indigo Spring on Nock. However, Irok arrives and says that they have to immediately repair it. It appears that in between Brightest Day and the current story, she has genuinely been changed even without wearing her ring by the Indigo Light. She says that the ring showed her just how much she hurt Abin by killing his daughter. The spark of sadness that she exhibited was the exact kind of spark of compassion that Nostromo needed to reforge their Indigo Central Power Battery. The second it became back online, everybody who was an Indigo Tribesman was immediately converted back into being an Indigo Tribesman, Sinestro included. However, it appears if you die while the ring is offline, much like Black Hand did, it will try and find a replacement for you, which seems very odd considering what we just were given in terms of how they induct people into their core this chapter, or this arc. If Hal didn't talk Orochi out of keeping Sinestro as one of their own, he would have never made it off of Planet Nock. Something else worth considering is Planet Nock is somewhere in Space Sector 2814, the same as Hal, as this was Abin's space sector to control, and they weren't supposed to travel too far out of their own sector. The Indigos show up a bit more after this event, but unfortunately it's nothing crazy anytime they do. The new gods catch them off guard, kill a few of them, take their rings. Ironically enough, Orochi understood why they were doing what they were doing, and actually betrayed all the other cores to Highfather, as they understood that Highfather was trying to use their powers to overcome Darkseid, a threat to every verse. They also show capable of using their teleportation all the way from the 3D plane to the God Sphere, so that's really interesting scaling when it comes to their teleportation. We don't come across them again until Sinestro actually hires Lobo to kill pretty much all of the Lanterns in the verse, and the Indigos were no exception to that. He rolls up on the Indigos, kills a ton of them, but Indigo 1 actually manages to teleport away before Lobo can get to her. So she is allegedly the only survivor that I am aware of as of now when it comes to the Indigo Light, which is kind of sad. But back to the title of the video. Why would you not be an Indigo tribesman or a member of the Compassion Lanterns? Only those without remorse or those who have vast grief are actually capable of utilizing these rings effectively. It forces compassion onto their users since they have no compassion themselves, and can in turn reflect a higher grade of compassion, aka scale much higher with that emotion. It's a very unorthodox way of utilizing the emotion in verse, but it makes sense with Abin's intentions of trying to deal with the Guardians of the Universe, especially if he genuinely did not want to kill them. But why would you want to be a part of a group of people who force an ideology upon you and limit your ability to feel other emotions genuinely, which was the entire point of these Indigo Lanterns? They aren't really even themselves anymore. They're fake people. They gave up their individuality, and as a result don't really have a lot of choice anymore. And in all honesty, being a Compassion or an Indigo tribesman sounds like a hell, not a heaven. Essentially, long story short, TLDR, prep time Abin Sur was trying to solo the Guardians of the Universe, and the Indigo Tribe was his first attempts at proving that the Indigo Light could indeed convert people who had no emotions and or had a lack thereof. And Abin kind of looked at Compassion as the kryptonite to the Guardians. I honestly think that it would have been a really cool or interesting narrative. It would have been cool to watch the Guardians of the Universe get indoctrinated by the Indigo Lanterns, especially the way Abin Sur kind of, his goals for them essentially were. Honestly, we saw a few instances of them attempting to target people. Sinestro here was cool, but I would like to see them go after like Larfleas too. I wish we could have gotten those what ifs. Speaking of which, one of my favorite scenarios of all time when it comes to DC Comics is, what if the Indigo Tribe decided to grab the Joker? Could the Joker survive this level of indoctrination? Or would like Batman have to team up with a few other Lanterns in order to bust them out? Or should they even do it in the first place? Would they even do it in the first place, considering it's a unique way of changing Joker for a force of good? I'll tell you what guys, tell me what you think of down low. That being said, we're kind of at the end of the video. Feel free to like and subscribe, as well as check out some of the other coffee shop content creators down low. Links in the description, as well as some of my other vids. I've been busting my ass trying to crank these out for you guys. These long form vids that are really informative and are just really interesting in general. But until next time, later Lanterns.